Have you ever pulled away from someone you loved, not because you didn't care, but because you were terrified of getting too close? What if the reason intimacy has always felt impossible isn't them? It's fear inside you, hiding, whispering, keeping you from the connection you crave most. Today, we're uncovering the truth. No one talks about fear is not your enemy. It's the doorway to real love. I want you to really sit with this for a second. Have you ever noticed how, when someone gets close to you, you suddenly pull away? Not because you don't care, but because something inside you whispers, don't get too close, you'll get hurt. Maybe it happens with a partner, a friend, or even someone you've just started to trust. You think it's them. Or maybe you tell yourself, I just can't connect right now. But if I'm honest with you, it's rarely about them. It's about fear. Fear has a quiet way of showing up. You might feel it as irritation when someone tries to get too close. Or maybe it shows up as distance, scrolling on your phone, or even as overthinking every little word they say. You tell yourself you're protecting yourself, but the truth is, the thing you're avoiding is exactly what you need most: intimacy. Think about it this way. I remember reading a study about attachment styles and how our early experiences shape the way we love. People with avoidant patterns, for example, aren't incapable of love. They're afraid of it. Their brains are wired to anticipate pain before it even happens, and so they instinctively push people away, sometimes even the ones they care about the most. The irony is heartbreaking. The very thing they crave, closeness, feels unsafe, and so they sabotage it before it can even exist. And it's not just science. Every culture, every philosophy, every spiritual tradition has recognized this tension between fear and connection. The monks would say that fear is like a shadow. It appears bigger in the dark, but the moment you shine light on it, it shrinks. The shadow isn't trying to harm you, it's trying to warn you. But most of us mistake it for the enemy. I want you to notice how many times in your life you've avoided saying what you really felt, or you hesitated to let someone see the real you. Maybe it was with a partner, maybe a friend, maybe even a parent. That hesitation, that pause, that small act of self-protection, it's fear talking. And the tricky part is, it doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Here's the thing, fear is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a signal that something matters. And intimacy, real, unguarded connection, matters more than almost anything else in life. The people who run from it aren't broken. They're just scared of what might happen if they truly let someone in. And if you felt that, I want you to know you're not alone. But here's the shift I want you to feel in this moment. What if the fear you've been running from is actually the doorway? What if leaning into it, instead of running, is the first step toward the kind of closeness you've been longing for? I want you to take a moment and imagine something with me. Imagine fear as a river flowing between you and the people you care about. You can see them on the other side reaching out, wanting to connect. But the river feels too wide, too deep, too dangerous. And so you step back, you tell yourself it's safer to stay where you are on the familiar shore. But the truth is, the river isn't trying to stop you. The river is trying to teach you. Think about it this way. I remember reading a story about the lotus flower. The lotus spends its life rooted in the mud, in darkness, in murky water. Yet it still finds a way to rise, to bloom, to reach the sunlight. Its growth is impossible without the resistance beneath it. Fear works the same way. The discomfort, the hesitation, the anxiety you feel about closeness, it's not there to punish you. It's there to prepare you. Every time you hesitate, every time your mind whispers, step back, it's too risky, it's actually signaling that something meaningful is on the other side. And this isn't just poetic thinking. There's a reason ancient philosophers and spiritual teachers spent so much time exploring fear and love. The Buddha, for example, taught that attachment and aversion are two sides of the same coin. We cling because we fear loss, and we pull away because we fear pain. The very thing we want, connection, is often the thing that triggers our deepest anxieties. That tension isn't weakness. It's life showing you the stakes. Here's the thing about fear. It always exaggerates. Your mind will imagine rejection, betrayal, abandonment, humiliation, all in advance. as if it's already happened. And the strange part is, when the mind convinces you it's protecting you, you start to believe it. You start to avoid, to overthink, to build walls that feel safe, but actually keep the warmth of connection out. And you don't even notice it happening until you feel the emptiness, the ache of distance, and wonder why intimacy always seems just out of reach. But here's a crucial insight. Intimacy isn't the absence of fear. Intimacy is moving forward even when fear is present. I remember reading a study on couples who reported the highest levels of satisfaction and closeness. The researchers found that these couples didn't avoid fear, they leaned into it. They shared the hard truths, they voiced their insecurities, they allowed themselves to be seen in ways that felt risky. And the result wasn't chaos or heartbreak, it was trust, it was depth, it was real connection. I want you to notice something important here. Fear doesn't disappear when you step into intimacy, it shifts. It becomes a compass. It tells you where you're pushing your limits, where you need courage, where the real growth happens. The people who seem effortlessly close, who seem fearless, they aren't unafraid. They're willing to face the fear. They're willing to wade into the river even if the current is strong. So the question I want you to hold right now is simple but powerful. What would happen if the next time fear shows up, you didn't run? What if you leaned in just a little, just enough to let someone see the real you? That's where the transformation begins. That's where the shadow of fear starts to shrink, and the possibility of intimacy, the kind that nourishes, the kind that lasts, starts to appear. The truth is this: fear is not your enemy. It's the doorway, and stepping through it doesn't promise perfection. It promises presence. It promises the chance to be fully seen, fully known, and fully loved. And isn't that what you've been longing for all along? I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine for a moment that fear is not a wall, but a signal pointing to exactly where connection matters most. Every time your chest tightens, every time your stomach knots, every time you feel that pull to step back, it's your mind and body saying, "This is important, don't take it lightly." And here's the thing. When you start to understand fear this way, it stops being an enemy. It becomes a guide. Think about it this way. I remember reading a study on attachment styles in adults. Researchers found that people with avoidant tendencies, the ones who pull back when love gets too close, weren't incapable of intimacy. Their brains were wired to anticipate hurt before it even arrived. That anticipation made closeness feel dangerous, even when the person across from them had nothing but care in their heart. It's not that they didn't want connection, they wanted it desperately, but the fear of vulnerability was louder than the desire for closeness. And here's the part most people miss. The fear itself is never the problem. The problem is what we do with it. Do we let it control us? Do we hide behind it, pushing others away? Or do we learn to move through it, to meet it, to see it for what it truly is? A doorway to something more real than anything we've experienced before. Let me give you a story. There was a woman I read about in a psychology journal who had a history of pushing people away whenever relationships got serious. She wanted love, but the closer someone got, the more her fear of rejection took over. Her therapist asked her to try something radical. The next time she felt fear rising, she would name it. She would say to herself, "This is fear. It's telling me something important is at stake. I can feel it without running." At first, it felt impossible. Her instincts screamed to retreat, but each time she paused, named the fear, and leaned just slightly closer, she discovered something astonishing. She could feel her heart expanding rather than shrinking. She could tolerate the discomfort. She could let herself be seen. And slowly, she started to experience intimacy, not as danger, but as life fully lived. You see, fear is a teacher. It tells you where your walls are, where your patterns live, and where your vulnerability has been suppressed. Step 1 is noticing it. Step 2 is naming it. Step 3 is choosing to move toward it anyway. It's not easy, and it's not supposed to be. But the alternative, avoiding fear, leaves us distant, lonely, and longing for a connection that never seems to arrive. Here's a practical way to start. Breathe. Notice the tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the rush of thoughts telling you to protect yourself. Say quietly to yourself, "This is fear. It is not the enemy. It is the doorway." And then take one small step toward connection. Maybe it's saying something honest to someone you trust. Maybe it's sharing a piece of yourself. This usually hides. Maybe it's simply listening fully and allowing yourself to feel. The step doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be forward. Think about the people who seem effortlessly close, the ones who are able to love deeply without pulling away. They don't have no fear. They feel it, just like you, but they've learned that intimacy is worth the discomfort. They've learned that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the pathway to being known. And here's the secret. You can learn it too. You can practice it moment by moment, step by step. So I want you to ask yourself right now, what if the fear you've been avoiding is actually pointing to the love you've been longing for? What if leaning in, even just a little, even imperfectly, is the first time in a long time you allow yourself to be fully alive in connection? Fear is not a stop sign, it's a signal light. And every time you move toward it, you teach yourself something powerful, that you are capable of closeness, that you are capable of trust, and that intimacy, real, raw, human intimacy, is possible for you. I want you to really sit with this next part because it's where the change begins. You've already noticed the fear, you've named it, and maybe you've felt it tighten in your chest like it always does. And that's okay. That tension isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that something important is about to happen. But noticing fear is only the first step. The next step is learning how to move through it. And that starts with small, deliberate action. Think about it this way. Fear is like a muscle. You can't make it disappear, but you can train it. I remember reading a study on exposure therapy, where researchers found that the more people gradually faced the situations they were afraid of, the less power fear had over them. It wasn't magic. It wasn't pretending the fear wasn't there. It was leaning into it, bit by bit, until the brain rewired itself to recognize that closeness is not danger. It's growth. And that's exactly what you can do with intimacy. The first step is simple, but profound. Name the fear every time it arises. You don't have to do it out loud if you're not ready. Just notice it. This is fear. My heart is racing because something matters. That's it. When you name it, you create space between yourself and the automatic impulse to pull back. You remind yourself that fear is a signal, not a verdict. Naming fear is the doorway to choice, and choice is the foundation of connection. The second step is to take tiny, deliberate steps. Think about someone you trust even a little and share one small truth about yourself. Maybe it's admitting that you're anxious, or that you were hurt in the past, or that you've been afraid to get too close. These are small acts, but they're powerful because they let you practice being seen without losing yourself. I remember reading about a couple who struggled for years because one partner had avoidant tendencies. The breakthrough came not from a grand gesture, but from a single moment, one small admission of fear, shared with courage. That tiny step didn't fix everything, but it rewired their connection. It reminded their brains that closeness was safe, that love was not a trap. Step 3 is to reframe intimacy itself. Most of us think of intimacy as a risk, something that can hurt us if we're not careful. But think about it this way, intimacy is not a gamble, it's a path. It's a way to discover who you really are and to allow others to discover you too. I remember a story from a meditation teacher who said, if you never let anyone see your cracks, they will never see your light either. The fear you feel when someone reaches for your heart is not a wall. It's the pulse of your own life reminding you that connection matters. Leaning in doesn't guarantee perfection. It guarantees presence. And presence is the heartbeat of intimacy. Now, I want you to imagine practicing these steps consistently. Imagine noticing the fear, naming it, and leaning in just a little every single day. Over time, those tiny steps accumulate. Walls you didn't even realize were there begin to soften. Trust grows not because the world became safer, but because you became braver. Vulnerability becomes less terrifying. Not because fear disappears, but because you learned how to move with it instead of against it. Here's something most people never tell you. Fear is not a flaw, your hesitation, your anxiety, your impulse to pull back. They are not signs of weakness. They are proof that your heart cares, that what's at stake is precious. And when you meet fear with curiosity instead of avoidance, when you allow yourself to take those small steps toward real connection, something remarkable happens. Intimacy stops being something scary and starts being something alive, something nourishing, something deeply human. So I want you to leave this moment with a question, not an answer. What if the very thing you've been avoiding, the discomfort, the nervousness, the fear, is actually the doorway to the connection you've been longing for? What if the ache in your chest is not a warning to stop, but a signal that something meaningful is within reach? You don't have to leap across the river all at once. You just have to step in 1 foot at a time. And every time you do, you teach yourself something profound, that you are capable of being seen, capable of being trusted, capable of loving and being loved in ways that matter more than anything else in life. Intimacy is not about eliminating fear, it's about moving through it. And the first step begins with you, right here, right now. I want you to really sit with this, because this is the part where everything starts to feel both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. You've been living with fear in your relationships for as long as you can remember, and maybe you didn't even notice it. Maybe you blamed your partner, or your circumstances, or the timing, or even yourself. But fear is sneaky. It doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It shows up as doubt, as withdrawal, as overthinking, as irritation. And the trick is, it often hides behind logic or practicality, so we mistake self-protection for reality. Think about it this way. I remember reading a study on the neuroscience of fear in relationships. When someone with avoidant tendencies feels themselves getting close to a partner, their brain actually lights up in areas associated with threat detection. It's not that closeness is dangerous in reality, it's that the body interprets intimacy as danger because of old patterns, past hurts, or early attachment experiences. Your mind isn't lying to you. It's doing exactly what it was trained to do: keep you safe. The problem is, what was once protective now keeps you from what you crave the most: connection, intimacy, and love. Here's the first truth I want you to hold. Your fear is not a failure. Your hesitation is not a flaw. Your impulse to step back doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Fear is evidence that something matters, and intimacy, true, unfiltered, authentic intimacy, matters more than almost anything else in life. Your fear is the signal that you are on the edge of something meaningful. But noticing that fear is not enough. The real challenge and the real liberation comes when you start to face it intentionally. And that doesn't mean grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It means small, consistent acts of courage, the kind that feel almost imperceptible, but over time, reshape the way your mind and heart respond to closeness. Step 1 is naming the fear as it arises. I want you to practice this. The next time your chest tightens or your stomach knots around someone you care about, pause, whisper to yourself, This is fear. My mind is reacting to something that matters. That simple act of recognition creates space between you and the automatic impulse to withdraw. You start to see fear not as a wall, but as a signal. The more you name it, the less power it has to control your behavior. Step 2 is taking small, deliberate steps toward vulnerability. I remember reading a case study about a man who had spent years avoiding intimacy. Every time a relationship started to deepen, he found a reason to distance himself. His therapist asked him to try a radical experiment. One small disclosure each day to someone he trusted. It could be a confession of a worry, a small fear, or a feeling he usually hid. At first, it felt unbearable. His heart raced, his mind screamed, "Don't do it." But over weeks, those small acts created a new pattern. His brain started learning. Closeness is not annihilation. Vulnerability is not danger. Connection is possible. Step 3 is reframing intimacy as growth rather than risk. Most of us think intimacy is a gamble, that letting someone see us fully might backfire, hurt us, or expose us. But what if it's not a gamble at all? What if it's the path to self-discovery, to being fully alive, to finding someone who can meet you where you are? I remember a meditation teacher saying, "Your cracks are the only places where light can enter." Your fear is like that crack. It's the place where life, love, and connection are waiting to shine in. Here's the beautiful irony. The more you lean into fear, the smaller it becomes. Each moment you pause, notice, and step forward even a little. You rewire your brain, you retrain your body to feel safety and closeness. You teach yourself that intimacy is not a threat, but a choice you can make. Moment by moment. It's not instant, it's not perfect, but it is real. And real is infinitely more powerful than safe. I want you to imagine what it would feel like to practice this consistently, to notice fear, name it, take one small step, and keep going. Over time, the walls you've built around your heart begin to soften. Your relationships become more authentic. You stop performing or hiding or predicting the worst. You start to show up as yourself. And here's the kicker. You start to attract people who can meet you there at the edge of your fear in the fullness of who you are. Think about the relationships you've longed for, the ones that feel just out of reach. They are not impossible. They are waiting on the other side of the fear you've been avoiding. Every step you take toward vulnerability is a step toward them. Every moment you lean in, even when your chest is tight, you are building courage. Every time you let yourself be seen, you are teaching the world how to meet you. So here's the final truth I want you to leave with. Fear is not the enemy of intimacy. Fear is the doorway. And every time you step through, even imperfectly, even hesitantly, you are proving to yourself that you are capable of connection, capable of trust, and capable of love that matters. You don't have to leap across the river all at once. You just have to take the first step, right where you are, and then another, and another. And suddenly, the fear that once held you back becomes the compass that guides you toward the closeness you've been longing for all along. Your heart is ready. You are ready. The first step is yours.